Hi, I'm Emyle Watkins, and this is the WBFO Disabilities Beat. Recently, Buffalo hosted leaders from the deaf community in France as part of the International Visitor Leadership Program through the U.S. Department of State. I had the chance to sit down with Jérémie Boroy, who serves as the advisor to the mayor of Paris on people with disabilities. We've got the entire interview with ASL interpretation on our website. But for today's segment, I wanted to share a bit of Boroy's perspective on disability advocacy. Boroy speaks French, so you will hear his answers translated by IVLP contractor Don Clark. I know that you helped create France's 2005 disability rights law that the United Nations recognizes as France's primary disability rights law. You've also helped develop significant revisions and policies since then. In your time in the U.S., have you noticed anything France could learn from the U.S., or conversely, where the U.S. could learn from France in terms of accessibility and disability rights law?
Ce n'est pas la première fois que je viens aux États-Unis, mais à chaque fois que je viens, je repars admiratif de la culture de l'accessibilité qui est développée ici.
This is not the first time that I've been in the United States, but each time that I've come here, I leave admiring very much the culture of accessibility which has been developed here. Even if there's still a lot to be done here, a lot more can be done for Americans to have full access to their rights when they are handicapped. Here in the major cities, businesses, for example, are very accessible and well equipped. I have the feeling that accessibility is seen as even as an opportunity, as a growth factor, perhaps. And this is not the case in France, not yet. In discussing with my counterparts, I noticed that we share a lot of the same frustrations. For example, in education for young deaf people, we notice that the same opportunities are not ensured throughout the land. And we see that it's the same thing in France. We don't have many interpreters and professionals to make communication accessible. We learned that here in the United States, about 50% of deaf Americans are without jobs, don't work. And we have the same situation more or less in France. But I have the impression that here in the United States, there's just more opportunities to progress in the area of accessibility. Even if in France we have a greater level of social protection, and that is kind of reassuring to us. I also have the feeling that Americans are much more determined to protect their rights, and that's very reassuring. Americans, for example, don't hesitate to go to court and to sue when their rights are not being respected. But I do unfortunately feel, I'm convinced that while in France we need to resort more to the law and to litigation to have our rights respected, and that is one reason why the American example gives me comfort, and I think that we can go forward on that area of using the law to have our rights respected. But there is something that we have been able to do in France that I haven't seen here in the United States. And that is that we've been able to go more into detail in determining the different categories of deaf people and what they need. So the law in France distinguishes between the different ways of communication. French sign language, for example, voicing, the French language which is complemented by signing vowels and consonants, for example. Cued speech, the French version of cued speech. Simultaneous transcription. Here in France, the communication is adapted to the needs of the person. And I find that very reassuring in France. In France, for example, one of the areas of progress we've made is to make the speeches by the president of our country more accessible to the deaf. When he speaks on television to the nation, the simultaneous interpretation appears. It's automatic, and it is true for all of the channels that are transmitting his speech. And this is true also of signing interpretation. We oftentimes will have two interpreters on the screen, and that will be true not just for the president's speeches, but for political debates, electoral debates as well.
Do you think that France still has a way to go in terms of enshrining disability rights in the law?
Bien sûr.
Of
Bien.
course.
Nous sommes encore très loin du résultat.
We are very far from the result we hope to obtain. The gap is still too wide between our law on protecting the rights, guaranteeing those rights, and the United Nations Charter on the rights of the handicapped. There's a big gap there. France still sees deaf people as people who need to be cared for. There are laws to protect the rights. There is an enormous amount of money that's being spent in France on behalf of the deaf handicapped. But we don't yet see the problem as being individualized. We don't see the individual as having this problem, needing this help, possibly having these responsibilities or these rights. We see them as a collective group rather than as an individual. We have in France this culture that sees, this group goes to this area, this home, or this group needs to be treated this way. And today we are fighting to get everyone included in the law, the common law, the law for everyone.
And as a final question, what has surprised you the most about this trip?
It's the fact that Americans do not hesitate to take the initiative. I've seen deaf people that have these amazing projects for themselves, and they go after it. They really pursue their goals. They're not passive. They take the initiative. And the fact that, what has struck me a lot is the fact that deaf people really do go participate in trying to find the solutions to the problems of lack of accessibility.
To listen to the Disabilities Beat segment on demand, view a transcript, and watch a full-length video version of this interview, visit our website at WBFO.org. I'm Emyle Watkins. Thanks for listening.